Nobody wants you here, my brother said, and my parents just nodded. But me? Those words kept echoing in my mind, nobody wants you here. They came from my brother, Joshua, spoken with absolute clarity, no hesitation, no guilt. My parents didn't even blink. It was like they'd all silently agreed a long time ago that my presence was a burden, one they'd finally decided to get rid of. The living room felt cramped, the air suffocating. I searched my mom's face, hoping to find some hint of regret, but there was nothing. Only exhaustion. My dad stayed seated on the couch, eyes locked on the TV, which wasn't even on. He didn't bother pretending to care. A lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it hard. I turned away and climbed the stairs. In my room, the silence weighed heavier than ever. Everything there was mine, my clothes, my books, my memories. How can someone be torn away from their own life like that, so suddenly? I took a deep breath and did what had to be done. I grabbed a suitcase and stuffed into it whatever would fit, clothes, documents, the little money I had. The rest, I left behind. There was no room for sentimentality. I cast one last look at my bedroom before turning off the light. The hallway was quiet. I went down slowly, the sound of the suitcase's zipper cutting through the silence of the house. My parents didn't come after me. Joshua stood by the door, arms crossed. When I reached the exit, I paused, as if waiting for someone to say something, anything, but nobody did. My mom looked away. My dad didn't move. My brother opened the door and said, impatiently, "Make sure you shut it on your way out." That was the last thing I heard before stepping outside. It was a cold night, the wind stung my skin. But nothing hurt more than that silence. I choked back tears and walked away without looking back. The first night I spent the first night in a cheap motel. The mattress was rock hard, the smell of cigarettes lingered in the stale air, and water stains crept across the walls. But at least it was a roof over my head, better than sleeping in my car. The second night my friend Amy let me crash on her couch. She wanted to know what was going on, but I didn't know how to explain that my own family had kicked me out for no apparent reason. How do you say that out loud without sounding pathetic? So I lied. Just a dumb fight. It'll blow over. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. The third night, I had no choice but to sleep in my car. My money was getting dangerously low, and I had to stretch it as long as possible. I parked near a 24-hour gas station, cracked the windows so they wouldn't fog, and tried to sleep. I couldn't. I had no plan. No destination. I only knew I couldn't go back. Or at least that's what I believed. Early the next morning, sunlight began flooding the stuffy interior of the car. My phone buzzed, once, twice, then over and over. 12 missed calls. My brother, my mom, even my aunt. But not my dad. My chest tightened. Something was wrong. Then came a text, "We need to talk. Now." They'd pushed me out, and suddenly they wanted me back? Why? Everything in me shouted to ignore them. But curiosity won out, and despite all common sense, I headed back. Returning home, the drive felt longer than before, like every mile added weight to my chest. My mind spiraled with possibilities. Did someone die? Were they sorry? Was this all a misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew better. People like my parents don't have regrets. My brother never wastes time on anyone who can't do him a favor. Still, I went. When I pulled up to the house, nothing looked different. The lights inside were the same, the atmosphere just as tense. But there was something in the air. A scent of trouble. Of urgency. I rang the bell. Joshua opened almost immediately, not meeting my eye. His stance was stiff, he never looked genuinely concerned. Something was off. "Come in," he muttered. I hovered in the doorway. "Say what you want and get it over with." He shot me an annoyed look, but before he could speak, my mom appeared in the hallway. Her eyes were red, but not from crying. From fear. My dad sat on the couch, head down, silent as ever. He didn't look at me. It was like he was waiting for a blow that might be worse than what had already happened. Everything in me screamed to leave. But curiosity kept me rooted there. My mom exhaled sharply, like she was about to drop a bombshell, and she did. "We need you to take the fall for something we did," she said. It felt like my whole body froze. "What?" She exchanged looks with my dad, as if hoping he'd jump in. But he stayed quiet. So my brother took the lead. "It's about some financial stuff. Loans. Your name got used. Technically, it wasn't supposed to be an issue. But someone leaked information." My stomach churned. "What do you mean you used my name? I never signed anything." Joshua rolled his eyes. "You didn't have to sign. It was just a loan. It shouldn't have gone south, but it did. We just need you to, take responsibility." Mom touched my arm, her voice trembling. "If you do this for us, well, you're young, you have a clean record. They probably won't keep you for long." I jerked my arm away. "You threw me out, and now you want me to go to jail for you?" My dad finally looked up, his eyes cold and emotionless. "If you don't do it, we'll go down. We wouldn't survive in prison." It wasn't a request, it was an order. My insides twisted. I wanted to scream, to break something. Then, somewhere in my mind, clarity started to form. They weren't desperate because they loved me, they were desperate because they needed a scapegoat. And I was the only one who fit the bill. I took a shaky breath. "Fine. If you want my help, I need something first." Joshua frowned. "What?" "Your phone. And I need a few hours. I have to figure out exactly what went down before I agree to anything." They had no choice, they needed me more than I needed them. Joshua scowled, my mom bit her lip, but in the end, they nodded. I turned around and left, this time unhurried, unafraid. Sitting in my car, I took out my own phone. The voice recorder was still running. I had everything. Every crooked word, every betrayal captured. Now it was my move. I locked the car doors and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. My chest felt like it was on fire, as if I was about to scream but couldn't let it out. They wanted me to lie down and take the blame for something they did. My own brother forged my documents. And my parents? They were fine with throwing me to the wolves if it meant saving themselves. There was a time when I would have believed they cared. That maybe they were just scared or confused. But not anymore. I wasn't that person. Not after everything. My phone was still in my hand. I replayed the recording. "If you take the blame, it'll be easier. You're young, you have a clean record. If you don't, then we all go down, and we'd never make it in jail." My own family had asked me, no, demanded, that I sacrifice myself. Something in me snapped. The last thread that was trying to find some excuse to forgive them just broke. And in its place, something else grew, resolve. I went to my contact list, scrolling until I found a number I never thought I'd dial, Midtown Police Station. My thumb hovered over it, heart pounding. If I did this, there was no going back. But they'd already made that choice for me. I pressed the call button and waited. 3 rings. A man's voice answered, "Midtown Police." "How can I help you?" My throat was dry. "I want to file a report." A pause. "Regarding what, ma'am?" I clenched the phone. Financial fraud. Forgery. Extortion. Another silence. "Is this your name on the documents?" I swallowed hard. "I'm the victim. And I have proof." He didn't miss a beat. We'll need you to come down to the station. I can't. Not yet. Why not? 1,000 alarms rang in my head. I couldn't just stroll in there without a plan. If they see me leave for the station, they'll know. I need them off guard. He was silent for a moment. If you have concrete evidence, we can move quickly. Are you safe right now? Safe? I glanced at my suitcase on the back seat. The dusty car I'd been sleeping in. My so-called family, ready to serve me up to the cops in their place. Yeah, I lied. I'm safe. All right. If you have enough proof, we can act. Someone will contact you soon. But if anything changes, call us back. He hung up. I sat there, trying to steady my breathing, telling myself it was going to be okay. Step 1 was done. Now, I just had to wait. I parked a block away from my parents' house. I couldn't get too close or they'd suspect something. But I couldn't leave either, I needed to see this through. My hands were clammy. My heart thudded so loud I was sure they could hear it from inside the house. Were they on to me? Did they suspect? Time dragged. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. The text said, "Message received. Team standing by. Action in 30 minutes." My eyes flew over the words. They were setting up the operation. This was actually happening. I rested my forehead on the steering wheel, letting reality sink in. I couldn't fail now. The price of truth. I checked the rearview mirror. A dark sedan pulled up at the end of the street, no sirens, no rush, just calm, practiced efficiency. The police were getting into position. A minute later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mom. My breath caught in my throat, but I answered. Hello? Her voice was tense, desperate. Honey, do you have an answer? Will you help us? They really believed I'd take the blame? You honestly think I'm gonna go to jail for something you did? Silence. Then my dad's voice came through, rough and low, "You don't have a choice." I swallowed the anger and held my voice steady. I have more choices than you realize. My mom tried to smooth it over. It doesn't have to be like this. We're a family. I let out a bitter laugh. A family? That's what you said when you kicked me out on the street. She fell silent. In the background, I heard my brother grumble, "She's stalling. She won't do it." My fury flared. "You'll find out soon enough," I said, and I hung up. The clock on my dashboard read 12:28, 2 minutes left. I closed my eyes and braced myself. And then I heard them, sirens slicing through the night. Game over. The sirens grew louder, echoing off the houses. My heart hammered so hard it drowned out everything else. I watched, breath held, as squad cars swarmed around my family's home, 1, 2, 3, all arriving in seconds. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, pounding on the front door, shouting, "Police! Open up!" I saw the living room curtains twitch. Joshua peeked out, face going pale. He knew. He knew exactly why they were there. Inside, lights flickered on and off. Shouts. Footsteps hurried across the floor. My dad scrambled from the couch. My mom darted behind him. They were panicking. Time slowed. Joshua was the first out the door, not by choice, but because officers yanked him out. "Get your hands off me," he yelled, thrashing. 2 officers slammed him onto the hood of a patrol car. "You're under arrest for financial fraud, forgery, and attempted extortion," one of them said. Joshua's eyes nearly popped from their sockets. "This is a mistake. I can explain." "Explain at the station," another officer replied, locking cuffs on him. Next came my mother, sobbing hysterically. She tried to explain, but no one listened. I'm a mother. I have rights. A female officer grabbed her, reciting the same cold words, "You're under arrest for financial fraud and conspiracy to commit forgery." My dad was last. He tried to appear composed, head held high, but it was pure bravado. He'd lost this fight before it even began. As the officers hauled him outside, our eyes locked. His face, once always so stern, was now ashen. Shocked. He knew it was me. As they passed me on the sidewalk, Joshua kept thrashing. He glared at me, teeth clenched. "You betrayed us." I stood there, unmoving. My voice cold. "You told me nobody wanted me here, remember?" My mother's voice trembled through her tears. "Please, sweetheart," I shook my head. "I'm not your sweetheart anymore." My dad didn't say a word. He stared at me as if searching for something, but I had no sympathy left. A police officer pushed him into the back seat of a cruiser. The doors slammed. One by one, the squad cars drove off. Then, silence. I stayed on that sidewalk a long time, staring at the house that once was my home. Now it was just walls and a roof, stripped of love, warmth, stripped of me. Finally, I got back into my car and exhaled. My phone buzzed again, a message from that unknown number. "All suspects in custody. Investigation ongoing. You're safe now." Safe. That word had never meant so much. For the first time, I was free of them, free of being a shield, of being their doormat. I was just me. I turned the key in the ignition, eyes on the empty road ahead. This time, I could drive anywhere without looking back. As I pulled away from that house for good, the first flickers of dawn cut through the night sky. This wasn't an end, I realized. It was the beginning of my own story. And that's how our story finishes here today. Until next time, onward to new beginnings.